She thought the waiter was just a waiter until the billionaire heir she spilled champagne on asked her to be his fake fiancé. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. The soft hum of a jazz quartet filled the air of the Lenox Hotel ballroom. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above rows of polished tables where New York's elite mingled, laughed, and raised their glasses. Anna Collins moved carefully through the crowd, balancing a silver tray of champagne flutes. Her black uniform was neatly pressed, but her shoes were scuffed, her hands dry from endless shifts. She was only here for one night, a temporary hire to cover someone's absence. She kept her head low, focusing on her steps, silently counting breaths. One misstep and $1,000 gown could be ruined. Her mother's medical bills flashed in her mind like neon lights, a reminder of why she could not afford mistakes. But mistakes have a way of finding those who fear them most. As she turned toward a group near the stage, her elbow brushed against something solid. Someone solid. A chill of horror ran through her as cold champagne splashed across a tailored charcoal suit. The man turned sharply, his blue-gray eyes locking on hers. "Oh my God, I am so sorry," Anna gasped, grabbing a napkin from her tray. She dabbed at the droplets on his jacket, her voice trembling. "I did not see you there, I swear I—" "It is fine," he interrupted, his tone clipped, his gaze unreadable. But it was not fine. Not for her. Up close, he was impossibly composed. Dark hair slicked back, jaw sharp, posture straight. The kind of man who owned the room without saying a word. And judging by the way the crowd subtly gave him space, he clearly did. "I will pay for the cleaning," Anna stammered. "Or, I can—" He looked down at her, his voice calm but cold. "You work for the hotel?" She nodded quickly. "Just tonight, sir. I am filling in." He studied her for a long second, then simply handed back the damp napkin. "Enjoy the rest of your shift." Anna's face burned. "Yes, sir." She turned away, heart pounding against her ribs. Her hands shook so much that the glasses on her tray rattled. A waiter beside her whispered, "You just spilled champagne on Ethan Lenox." Her stomach dropped. Ethan Lenox, as in Lenox Holdings, the billionaire heir, the man whose name was printed on half the skyscrapers she passed on her commute. By the time she reached the staff corridor, her throat ached from holding back tears. She leaned against the wall, forcing slow breaths. "One night, Anna," she whispered to herself. "Just one night. Do not ruin this." But the universe had other plans. The next morning, while Anna was washing dishes in the back of a small cafe, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She wiped her hands on her apron and hesitated before answering. "Hello? Miss Collins," a deep voice said. Calm, deliberate. "This is Ethan Lenox." She froze, nearly dropping the phone. "Mr. Lenox? I am so sorry about last night. I did not mean—" "I am not calling about the spill," he said, his tone unreadable. "I have a proposition for you. Something mutually beneficial." Anna blinked. "A proposition?" "Yes," Ethan replied. "Meet me at the Lenox Tower at noon. I will explain everything then." The call ended before she could ask why. She stood there in silence, the hum of the cafe fading into static. Her reflection stared back at her from a streaked steel counter. Tired eyes, messy hair, the face of someone who had learned that life rarely offered second chances. She did not know it yet, but that single phone call, the consequence of one clumsy mistake, was about to change everything she thought she knew about luck, pride, and love. And it all started with a glass of spilled champagne. Anna arrived at Lenox Tower just before noon, clutching the strap of her worn handbag like it was a lifeline. The glass building rose above the clouds, its mirrored surface catching the late morning light and throwing it back in sharp, golden flashes. She felt small standing in the marble lobby among men in tailored suits and women with sleek hair and expensive heels. "Name, please," the receptionist asked. "Anna Collins," she said, trying not to sound nervous. "Mr. Lenox told me to come." The receptionist's polite smile faltered slightly before she checked the schedule. Yes, Miss Collins. Mr. Lennox is expecting you. 39th floor. Anna followed the directions, the elevator gliding upward in silence. Her reflection in the mirrored wall looked like someone pretending to belong a simple blouse, a faded skirt, and shoes that had seen better days. When the doors opened, a gust of cool air greeted her. The top floor was bright, minimalist, and far too quiet. Through the glass walls, she saw him, Ethan Lennox, standing by a window that overlooked the city. His suit today was navy, his tie precise, his posture flawless. He turned as she entered, his eyes steady. Miss Collins, he said evenly. Thank you for coming. She forced a nervous smile. You said you had a proposition? He gestured toward a chair across from his desk. Please sit. Anna obeyed, feeling out of place on the leather seat. Ethan's office looked like something out of a magazine. Sleek shelves, a sculpture of glass and steel, and not a single item out of place. I need a fiancé, he said bluntly. Anna blinked. I am sorry. A temporary one, Ethan clarified. There is a shareholder meeting in 2 weeks. My position as acting CEO depends on convincing the board that I am stable, committed, and ready to lead long term. Certain people are trying to remove me. A public engagement will make that more difficult. She stared, unsure if he was serious. And you want me to pretend to be your fiancé? You are the only person who saw me last night as just a man, he said quietly. Not as a name or a title. You have nothing to gain from me, which makes you perfect for this. Anna laughed softly, though it sounded more like disbelief. Mr. Lennox, I am a waitress. I do not belong in your world. He opened a folder and slid it across the desk. Inside was a printed agreement, neat, legal, terrifying. The arrangement would last 30 days, he said. In return, you will receive $250,000. Enough, I assume, to take care of your mother's medical bills. Anna's throat tightened. How do you even know about that? I make it my business to know who I am dealing with, Ethan said simply. Your record was easy to find. You work 2 jobs, and you are months behind on rent. You are desperate. I am offering a solution. Her pride flared at his words. You are offering a transaction. He did not flinch. You can call it whatever you like. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioner. Anna looked down at the folder again, the neat lines of the contract blurring as her vision swam. What happens after 30 days? She asked quietly. We part ways, Ethan said. You go back to your life, and I go back to mine. Anna's chest rose and fell slowly. Every instinct told her to walk away, but her mother's hospital bills told a different story. She lifted her gaze to his. You promise no one will get hurt? Ethan hesitated for the first time, then nodded. That is my promise. Anna exhaled shakily and reached for the pen resting beside the contract. The metallic click echoed in the quiet room as she pressed her name onto the paper, one hesitant signature that tied 2 very different worlds together. When she stood to leave, Ethan extended his hand. Welcome to the arrangement, Miss Collins. She met his gaze, uncertain whether she was saving her life or selling it. Let us hope, she said softly. This is not the worst mistake I have ever made. And as the elevator doors closed behind her, Ethan watched her go, his reflection overlapping hers in the glass, 2 strangers bound by one contract, neither realizing how deeply it would change them both. The next morning, Anna stood in front of a full-length mirror inside the Lennox estate, feeling completely out of place. The marble floor gleamed beneath her feet, and her reflection stared back like a stranger. She wore a soft gray dress chosen by a stylist Ethan had hired, her hair curled neatly, her face touched by makeup for the first time in months. She looked expensive and terrified. Miss Collins, said a woman in a sharp black suit, her voice clipped. The contract requires you to attend 5 public events with Mr. Lennox. The first is a charity auction tomorrow night. You will smile, speak only when spoken to, and most importantly, do not contradict him in public. And everyone in that apiece set her up save any brace. Is lever any time? Anna nodded quickly, trying to absorb every word. Understood. The woman adjusted a folder in her hands. You will also wear this. She opened a small velvet box and revealed a diamond ring so dazzling it nearly caught Anna's breath. It looks real, Anna murmured. It is not, the woman replied. But the illusion must be flawless. When the woman left, Anna slipped the ring on her finger. The weight of it felt foreign cold metal pressing into skin that had known only dish soap and overtime shifts. Ethan appeared in the doorway a moment later, his suit crisp, his expression composed. "You clean up well," he said, almost casually. Anna managed a nervous smile. "So do you. Although I imagine you wake up looking like that." For the first time, his mouth curved slightly. "I will take that as a compliment." He stepped closer, holding out a small booklet. "This is a briefing. It lists your background, our engagement story, and key dates. Memorize it." She flipped through it, eyes widening. "So, we met at a friend's art show?" "That is the story," Ethan confirmed. "And you impressed me by talking about sincerity instead of profit margins." Anna looked up at him, a spark of humor flickering in her eyes. "That actually sounds like something I would say." He smirked faintly. "That is why I kept it." For a heartbeat, the air between them felt lighter, almost human. Then he cleared his throat and turned toward the window. "Car will pick you up at 6 tomorrow. Be ready." That night, Anna lay awake in the guest suite, staring at the ceiling as city lights flickered through the curtains. Somewhere in the same mansion, Ethan Lennox was probably working late, surrounded by numbers and contracts that meant more to him than people. She wondered what kind of man could build an empire, but not trust anyone enough to stand beside him willingly. The following evening, the gala unfolded in a blur of glittering lights and murmured conversation. Cameras flashed as soon as Ethan and Anna stepped through the grand doors. His hand rested lightly at her waist, his movements practiced and calm. To the watching world, they looked like a perfect couple. "Smile," Ethan whispered under his breath. "You are doing fine." Anna's pulse raced. "I feel like everyone can see through me." "They cannot," he said softly. "They only see what they want to believe." As they moved from one conversation to another, Anna began to notice things she had missed before: the way Ethan subtly protected her from intrusive questions, how his tone softened whenever he addressed her directly, how his eyes flicked toward her whenever a camera flashed. During a quiet moment between toasts, a woman approached, a tall blonde, with calculating eyes and a glass of wine balanced perfectly in her hand. "So this is the fiancé," she said smoothly. "You move quickly, Ethan." "This is Anna Collins," Ethan replied politely. "Anna, this is Miranda." Miranda's smile tightened. "Oh, I have heard plenty about her. The waitress, right? How charming." Anna's face flushed, but before she could respond, Ethan's voice cut through the tension. "Miranda, I believe the dessert table is missing your attention." The woman blinked, offended, and walked away. Anna looked at him, surprised. "You did not have to do that." "I do not tolerate disrespect," he said simply. For the first time since signing the contract, Anna felt something stir, something dangerously close to gratitude. Later that night, as the car carried them back to the estate, the city lights danced across the tinted windows. Anna stared at her reflection, the fake diamond glinting faintly on her finger. She turned to Ethan, her voice quiet. "For someone who claims this is only business, you are oddly kind." He looked out at the passing skyline, expression unreadable. "Do not mistake professionalism for kindness, Miss Collins," and an arm in the right and rum. But when she glanced down, she noticed his hand resting just inches from hers on the seat between them, close enough that, for a fleeting second, she wondered if his words were true. A week later, Anna was beginning to understand the strange rhythm of her new life. Mornings started with fittings, etiquette lessons, and media coaching. Afternoons were filled with scheduled appearances beside Ethan, where she had to smile, nod, and play the role of a woman in love. But when the crowds disappeared and the cameras went dark, she returned to her quiet guest room, removing the fake diamond ring from her finger and setting it on the nightstand beside her mother's photo. Despite the money promised, something about the arrangement left her restless. The Ethan Lennox she saw in public was confident, untouchable, perfectly controlled. The man she glimpsed in private moments, tired eyes, loosened tie, quiet sighs when he thought no one was watching, was someone else entirely. That evening, after a long meeting at the Lennox Foundation, Ethan suggested dinner at his favorite rooftop restaurant. "It will be good practice," he said, buttoning his jacket. "There will be press." Anna followed him to the sleek black car waiting outside. The night air was cool, and the city glowed beneath them as they arrived at the restaurant's terrace. Candlelight flickered across tables, and a soft jazz tune drifted between conversations. Halfway through the meal, as Anna practiced her perfect posture and polite smile, a group of executives joined them. Among them was a man with silver hair and an arrogant smirk, Richard Hale, one of Ethan's top investors. "So this is the fiancé," Richard said, shaking her hand just a little too long. "Ethan, you never mentioned she was so charming. Or so young." Anna kept her voice calm. "It is nice to meet you, Mr. Hale." Richard leaned back, sipping his wine. "Tell me, Miss Collins, where did you two meet again?" "At an art show," she replied, repeating the line from their story. He was the only person who did not pretend to understand modern art. The table laughed politely, and Ethan's lips curved slightly. But Richard was not done. "And what were you doing there, serving drinks?" The laughter died instantly. Anna froze, heat flooding her cheeks. Ethan's expression darkened. "That is enough, Richard," he said, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Oh, come on, Ethan," Richard chuckled. "Everyone knows you have a type, someone who will not ask questions as long as the credit card still works." Ethan rose from his chair so suddenly that the candles on the table flickered. "You are out of line." The conversation around them stopped. Richard raised his hands in mock surrender, smirking. "Relax, I was only joking." "Then find a better joke," Ethan said coldly. "One that does not insult my fiancé." He dropped his napkin on the table and turned to Anna. "We are leaving." Outside, the elevator doors closed behind them with a soft chime. Anna stared at the city skyline glowing through the glass. "You did not have to defend me," she said quietly. Ethan loosened his tie. "Yes, I did." She studied him for a long moment. "For a man who built walls around himself, you are surprisingly protective." He gave a humorless laugh. "Protecting you protects me. If they question you, they question me. They set a reformant." "Maybe," she said softly, "but I think you meant it." He looked at her, and for the first time, his guard slipped. "You talk too much, Miss Collins." "And you hide too much, Mr. Lennox," she replied. The elevator doors opened to the quiet of the parking garage. He stepped aside, letting her walk ahead, his gaze following her. For a moment, she thought she saw something vulnerable in his eyes, something human, something real. Later that night, back in her room, Anna touched the fake diamond ring and replayed his words in her mind. Somewhere between the lies and the lessons, between the contracts and the cameras, a dangerous question began to form in her heart. What if this was no longer fake? The next few days blurred into a strange mix of rehearsed perfection and quiet confusion. Every headline praised Ethan Lennox and his mysterious fiancée. "A modern love story," one magazine called it. Anna could barely recognize herself in the glossy photos, her hand tucked in Ethan's, her smile polished and calm. But behind that smile, questions grew heavier. How much of this was pretend? And why did every glance from him make her heartbeat forget it was acting? On Friday night, Ethan brought her to a private charity gala hosted in the glass atrium of Lenox Tower. The ceiling shimmered with hanging lights, and the city glittered beyond the windows like an ocean of gold. Cameras lined the entrance. As their car stopped, Ethan turned to her. "Remember," he said softly, "tonight is about control. Whatever happens, you stay beside me." She nodded, trying to steady her breathing. "I can handle it." When they stepped out, flashes erupted like fireworks. Ethan slipped his arm around her waist, his touch steady and deliberate. They moved through the crowd in rhythm, a performance rehearsed to perfection. But the act faltered when a familiar voice cut through the noise. "Well, this is quite the fairy tale," Miranda said, her tone dripping with sweetness. Dressed in emerald silk, she looked every inch the rival socialite. Who would have thought the waitress from last year's event would rise so fast? Anna froze. She had never told anyone about working that previous gala. Miranda's smile sharpened. "You remember, Ethan. She was the one who spilled champagne all over your suit." A ripple of murmurs spread through the nearby guests. Ethan's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, Miranda continued. "Quite the coincidence, don't you think? From staff to fiancé in 1 year. Some women are truly resourceful." Anna's chest burned with humiliation. She could hear the whispers forming around them, the judgment cutting through the air. She turned to Ethan, searching for his support, but his expression was unreadable. "Is it true?" someone asked from the crowd. Ethan exhaled slowly. "It is true," he said, voice calm but distant. "That was the night I met her." Miranda's smile faltered slightly, sensing the shift. Ethan continued, his tone firm. "And that accident was the best thing that ever happened to me." The crowd's murmuring softened, curiosity replacing scorn. But Anna saw it, the small flicker of control behind his words. He was not defending her, he was managing the story, protecting his reputation, not her dignity. When the evening ended, Anna slipped away from the cameras, her chest tight. She waited near the service exit, the same corridor she had used the night she spilled champagne on him. Ethan found her there minutes later. "You left before the car arrived," he said quietly. "I did not want to ruin your photos," she replied, her voice trembling. "You handled it well. You always do." He stepped closer. "Anna, do not," she said sharply, tears brimming in her eyes. "Do not pretend this means anything to you." His jaw tensed. "Everything I did tonight was to protect you." "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "You did it to protect yourself." Silence fell between them. Beyond the glass wall, rain began to fall against the city lights. "You are right," he said finally, his voice low. "This was a business arrangement, nothing more." Anna swallowed hard and forced a small nod. "Then, consider the business finished." She slipped off the ring, the fake diamond catching the dim light one last time before she placed it in his hand. "Goodbye, Mr. Lennox." She walked out into the rain without looking back. Ethan stood frozen in the empty corridor, the sound of the storm echoing against the marble walls. For the first time in years, the man who had everything realized what it meant to lose something real, something that had never been for sale. Rain poured relentlessly that night as Anna hurried through the streets of Manhattan, her thin coat soaked through. Each drop hit her like a cold reminder of everything she had just walked away from: the mansion, the clothes, the illusion of safety. But beneath the ache of betrayal was something steadier, something she had not felt in a long time: pride. She had kept her dignity intact, even in front of a man who had tried to buy it. By the time she reached her small apartment, her shoes were squishing water, and her hands trembled as she turned the key. Inside, the dim light flickered over, peeling wallpaper and stacks of medical bills. Her mother, asleep on the worn couch, stirred as Anna entered. "Sweetheart, you are drenched," her mother murmured weakly. "Did the job end early?" Anna knelt beside her, brushing wet strands of hair from her mother's forehead. "Something like that," she whispered, forcing a small smile. "Do not worry, Mom. Everything is fine." But as her mother drifted back to sleep, Anna pressed her forehead against the armrest, fighting the tears she had held back all night. "You deserve better than this," she whispered, "and I will find a way to give it to you." Across town, Ethan Lennox sat alone in his study, staring at the ring she had left behind. It lay on the desk beside a half-finished glass of whiskey, the fake diamond reflecting the city lights outside. For once, the silence in his penthouse felt suffocating. His phone buzzed with messages, statements from his publicist, damage control reports, and board meeting reminders. But he ignored them all. He replayed Anna's last words over and over in his head. "You did it to protect yourself." She had been right. His entire life was built on control, on appearances, negotiations, and survival. But when she looked at him, she had not seen a name or a company. She had seen a man. And he had ruined that. The following week, gossip headlines exploded. Lennox engagement over. Was it all a publicity stunt? Ethan refused interviews. His Aunt Miranda, now emboldened, called for a board vote to remove him as acting CEO, claiming he had brought disgrace to the family name. During the meeting, surrounded by rows of shareholders, Ethan's voice was steady but distant. "If integrity is measured by the ability to deceive," he said, "then perhaps I am not fit to lead." The boardroom went silent. Miranda smirked, thinking she had won. But then Ethan added quietly, "However, if leadership is measured by the willingness to admit mistakes and make them right, then I am just getting started." And that organ forgot out. He walked out before anyone could respond. Later that night, he returned to the small cafe where he had first found Anna washing dishes. The place was nearly empty, the smell of coffee and rain mingling in the air. The manager recognized him instantly, eyes widening. "Mr. Lennox." "I am not here for attention," Ethan said softly. "Does Anna Collins still work here?" "She left last week," the manager said. "Said she needed a clean start. She was saving for her mother's treatment." Ethan nodded slowly, disappointment flickering in his eyes. He turned to leave but paused at the door, noticing something on the bulletin board, a flyer for a local art exhibition titled "The Colors We Hide." Scribbled at the bottom, in familiar handwriting, was a note, "By Anna Collins." He stood there for a long moment, reading the words again. Then he smiled faintly. 2 days later, the exhibition opened in a small community gallery in Brooklyn. Anna stood near her display of watercolor portraits, modest but proud. She had painted faces of ordinary people, waitresses, janitors, street vendors, the invisible workers who kept the city alive. When the door opened and Ethan Lennox stepped inside, the world seemed to go still. He wore no suit, no tie, just a dark coat and a hesitant expression. Anna froze, her heart lurching. "What are you doing here?" "This feeler." He looked around at the paintings before meeting her gaze. "You told me once that I hide too much," he said quietly. "So I came to stop hiding." She crossed her arms, unsure if she could believe him. "You should not be here." "As, maybe not," Ethan said, stepping closer. "But I needed to see the woman who reminded me that honesty is worth more than reputation." Anna's voice softened despite herself. "It was never about money, Ethan." "I know," he said, his tone steady, almost pleading. "That is why losing you hurt more than anything else ever has." For a long moment, they stood in silence, surrounded by color and truth. No photographers, no contracts, no lies. Just two people who had once pretended to love and accidentally learned what love really meant. And for the first time, Ethan Lennox smiled not as the billionaire heir, but as a man trying to begin again. For several seconds, neither Anna nor Ethan moved. The air inside the small gallery felt thick, charged with everything they had left unsaid. A soft murmur of conversation drifted from another room. But here, it was just them, two people standing in front of a painting that told more truth than either of them could say aloud. Anna finally broke the silence. "You should not have come, Ethan. People will talk." "Let them," he said quietly. "They always do." Second redaction is Fledge in the sitter of the H. Than life. Getting the back at instant sitter, she turned toward one of her canvases, a portrait of her mother sitting by the window, sunlight spilling across her face. "This is my world now," she said. "Small, quiet, honest. I do not belong in yours." Ethan stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "Maybe that is what I needed to learn. That not everything worth having fits neatly into a boardroom plan." Anna swallowed hard. "You learned that after hurting me?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, and after losing you." Before she could respond, the door opened, and a wave of reporters burst inside, cameras flashing. Miranda's voice echoed from the entrance, cold and sharp. "There you are, Ethan. I warned you what would happen if you kept chasing that charity project of yours." Anna's stomach sank. "What is this?" Miranda strode forward, her emerald coat glinting under the gallery lights. "Your little art show is about to become front-page gossip, Miss Collins. Billionaire heir caught with former fake fiancé. That should finish what little reputation he has left." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Enough, Miranda." "Oh, please," she sneered. "You have already humiliated the family once. Now you are parading this girl around like a redemption story." Anna's hands trembled. She hated scenes, hated attention. But this was different. This was cruelty disguised as sophistication. She straightened her shoulders, forcing calm into her voice. "This is my work," she said. "Not a scandal, not a prop. These are people with real stories, not headlines for your amusement." Miranda's smirk faltered. "You really think you can shame me with paint?" "No," Ethan said, his tone dark and measured. "But I can." He turned to the cameras, stepping between Anna and the flashes. "You want a story?" he said, his voice steady. "Here it is. I was the one who lied. I made her sign a contract to pretend she loved me because I was too afraid of losing control. She walked away when she realized I had none, and she was right to do it." Gasps rippled through the room. Miranda's face went pale. Ethan continued, "If there is anyone who deserves your headlines, it is me, not her." Anna stared at him, speechless. The man who once guarded every word had just exposed himself completely, not for gain but for truth. Miranda hissed, "You have just destroyed your career." Ethan turned to her. "Then I guess I finally built something real." The reporters shouted questions, flashes popping like fireworks, but Ethan reached for Anna's hand, guiding her toward the exit. Outside, the cool night wrapped around them. The city buzzed below, but for the first time, it felt distant, like background noise to a life that no longer belonged to either of them. Anna looked at him under the streetlight. "You did not have to do that." He smiled faintly. "I wanted to. I was tired of pretending." She hesitated, unsure how to bridge the space between forgiveness and fear. So, what happens now? Ethan's eyes softened. Now, I start over. And if I am lucky, I do it honestly this time. The sound of sirens echoed somewhere in the distance, mixing with the hum of rain-soaked traffic. Anna looked down at their joined hands, her pulse unsteady. You really do not care what they say? She asked. For the first time in my life, Ethan said, his voice low and sincere, I care more about what you think. Zero. AR. In the port 9. Under the pale glow of the streetlight, Anna realized something quietly profound. This was not the arrogant heir she had met months ago. This was a man learning what it meant to be human. And despite everything, her heart ached to believe him. The next morning, New York woke up to headlines that no one expected. Ethan Lennox admits contract engagement. Billionaire heir apologizes publicly. Fake fiancé speaks through art. The story was everywhere on the morning news, social media, and even the billboards flashing above Times Square. But instead of scandal, something strange happened. People admired his honesty. They called it redemption. Inside the small Brooklyn gallery, the once quiet room now buzzed with visitors. Anna stood near her paintings, overwhelmed by the sudden flood of attention. Donations poured in for her mother's treatment fund, and strangers praised her courage. But all she could think about was the man who had walked out of that room with her hand in his the night before. Ethan had not called. He had not needed to. She knew that, somewhere in the chaos of the media storm, he was cleaning up the mess he had created and doing it alone. That evening, the gallery's door opened again, and the room fell silent. Ethan Lennox walked in, wearing the same dark coat, his eyes tired but calm. People whispered, pointing, but he did not look at anyone except her. Anna's heart thudded as he approached. You should not be here, she said quietly. He smiled faintly. I seem to hear that from you a lot. You are on every news channel in the country, she said. You are risking everything. I already risked it, Ethan replied. Now I am just living with the result. She folded her arms. And what exactly are you looking for now? Another deal? Another apology? He shook his head. No more deals. No contracts. I just came to make something right. He gestured to the small stage at the center of the gallery, where a local reporter had been waiting to interview Anna. May I? He asked softly. Anna hesitated, then nodded. Ethan stepped onto the stage and took the microphone. The crowd hushed instantly. I built a life on power and control, he began. I believed that money could fix anything, that reputation was more valuable than truth. But then I met a woman who did not care who I was. She only cared whether I was kind. He looked directly at Anna. I failed her. I treated her like a transaction when she was the only honest thing in my world. Murmurs rippled through the audience, but Ethan continued, his voice steady. So today I am announcing that I am stepping down from Lennox Holdings. The company will be turned over to the charitable trust I created, the Collins Fund, for small business owners, artists, and people who were never given a chance. Gasps filled the gallery. Anna's hand went to her mouth, eyes wide. Ethan smiled gently. It is named after her, because she taught me that real wealth is measured by what you give, not what you keep. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes blinked wildly, but Ethan lowered the microphone and stepped off the stage. As he crossed the room toward Anna, the noise around them faded into a distant hum. You did not have to do that, she whispered when he reached her. Yes, I did, he said softly. For once, I wanted my actions to speak louder than my money. Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them back. You just gave away everything. He shook his head. Not everything. From his coat pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box, the same one that once held the fake ring. But this time, inside was a simple band of gold. No diamonds, no glitter, just a quiet promise. I never meant for our story to begin with lies, he said, voice trembling. But if you will let me, I would like to end it with truth. Anna's breath caught. The room seemed to blur until only he remained in focus. Ethan, she whispered. He took her hand, his fingers trembling slightly. No contracts, no conditions, just us. For real this time. For a moment, the world fell completely silent. Then Anna smiled through her tears and whispered, for real. The crowd erupted in applause, cameras flashing like bursts of light around them, but neither of them noticed. Because for the first time since that night of spilled champagne, Everything finally felt real. The weeks that followed felt like a quiet sunrise after a long storm. The headlines faded, the noise softened, and what remained was something simple and real. Ethan kept his word. He stepped away from Lennox Holdings completely. His name slowly disappeared from the financial news and reappeared in smaller, humbler places. Community programs, scholarship lists, and local projects funded by the Collins Fund. Anna's art studio, a once empty corner of Brooklyn, became a place of warmth and laughter. She taught free weekend classes for children and senior citizens who had never picked up a paintbrush before. Every now and then, she caught herself smiling when she looked at the sign above the door painted in gold letters, "The Art of Second Chances." One evening, as the sun sank behind the skyline, the studio lights glowed softly against the glass windows. Anna was cleaning brushes when the door opened and Ethan stepped in. He looked different now, calmer, freer, the lines of pressure on his face replaced by something lighter. He carried a small paper bag that smelled faintly of cinnamon. "You still forget to eat dinner," he said, setting the bag on the table. Anna smiled. "And you still bring food like it is a peace offering." "Maybe it is," he said with a grin. The cafe downstairs said this was your favorite. They sat on the floor, sharing pastries from the bag, crumbs scattering between them. For a long time they said nothing. The silence was no longer heavy. It was easy, familiar. Finally Ethan spoke softly. "Do you ever think about that night? The gala, the champagne?" Anna laughed quietly. "I try not to. I was a disaster." "You were real," he said. "And that is what I needed most." She looked at him, the warmth in his eyes reflecting the soft studio lights. "You know, I never thought the man I ruined a suit for would end up ruining my plans for a quiet life." He chuckled. "You call this quiet? You have reporters still begging for interviews." "I ignore them," she said, smiling. "They would never understand anyway." Ethan leaned back against the wall, watching her as she organized her paints. "You changed everything, Anna. You changed me." Anna set down the brush and met his gaze. "You changed yourself, Ethan. I just refuse to let you hide." "Yes." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "What is that?" she asked. He handed it to her. It was a deed official and stamped. "The building lease," he said. "I bought it through the fund and transferred ownership to you. This place is yours now. No rent, no conditions." Her breath caught. "Ethan, you cannot just—" "I can," he interrupted gently. "And I wanted to. This studio is where I first saw you being exactly who you are. Honest, brave, kind. It belongs to you." Anna felt her throat tighten as she folded the paper carefully. "You always find a way to surprise me." He smiled. "Then let me surprise you one more time." The wave silos bid tests in action. From his pocket, he took out the same simple gold ring, the one he had shown her weeks earlier in the gallery. But this time, he did not kneel or make a grand gesture. He just held it between them, quiet and steady. "I do not have an empire anymore," he said softly. "Just a heart that I finally know how to use. Anna Collins, will you share this life with me?" Her eyes filled with tears. She reached out, taking his hand. "You already know my answer." He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Outside, the city glowed in the distance, lights shimmering across the river. Inside the studio, laughter echoed softly against the walls, blending with the hum of evening traffic and the scent of cinnamon. Anna leaned her head on his shoulder, whispering, "Maybe that champagne spill was not such a bad mistake after all." Ethan smiled, kissing the top of her head. "The best mistake I ever made." And in that small Brooklyn studio, far from the noise, the lies, and the luxury, they began their real story. One built not on contracts or conditions, but on the simplest and strongest truth of all: love that chose honesty over everything else.